Wow, a lot of information, a lot of great points, a lot of ideas, a lot of things to think about. I think one of Nate's slides, and I can't exactly remember what it was, but it talked about silos. And I think what I heard over and over and over in both of those presentations is nobody can do this alone. We have to do it together. So again, I will say thank you for being here with us today to help us figure out how to do this together. And then again, like I said earlier, hope like heck we never have to, but let's move forward. Let's continue to work together and figure out how to do it together so that we're ready if we have to. And in lieu of that, or as part of that, Mara Murphy, who is our Region 9 Healthcare Coalition planner, is going to spend some time with us to talk to us about our Region 9 Healthcare Hazard Vulnerability Assessment results. Some work she's been facilitating on our behalf. I think it's beneficial to us, and I think that it will be beneficial to you to hear what she has to share with us today. So, Maren?
Hello, can you hear me? I feel like an FBI agent up here with my little microphone there and my tag. All right, so I'm going to talk about our hazard vulnerability assessment that we are just wrapping up. I talked about it in November, if you were here. And so I'm going to go over a little bit of the process again, and then show our top hazards, which we will all be happy to know are not hurricanes. So the hazard vulnerability assessment, this is the definition from ASPR. It's essentially the probability and the impact, the probability of a hazard, which is measured in the occurrence or the likelihood of it occurring, plus the impact of the hazard equals the risk that is faced. That's just a very basic definition. So we're all on the same page. So the process that we took is, and I should say, so this is a regional level hazard vulnerability assessment. So as we go through, if you've done one for your organization or facility, this is a little bit different because we're sort of aggregating up to a regional level, which I'll go over a little bit more. But for the process, we did a kind of 3 rounds of collecting information, and then feedback, and collecting it again and feedback over a couple months. Our first round was a survey to identify from a general list of hazards what the priority hazards were. The second round was to review that list that was rated on, and then also assess the readiness related to emergency management, the phases of emergency management. And then our last round we did in December was a webinar to kind of look at all the results that we had up to this point and discuss the initial findings and outcomes and kind of where we want to go from there. And the outcome, of course, is a regional level assessment that organizations and facilities within the Region 9 Healthcare Coalition can use as sort of a baseline assessment as you guys do your own HVAs and consider what hazards might impact your specific facilities. This is kind of looking at the regional level, so something to compare and contrast as you're doing your own. And then it also will be helpful for us as a coalition to do all of our trainings and exercises and drills and additional planning. Again, it serves as that baseline for us as well. So a couple of things to understand about this, that although this assessment is like organizational site-specific HVAs, it is not a replacement for those. So as you're looking at these, some of the hazards might not seem as relevant on a day-to-day basis for you. So know that this is not a replacement for what you guys are doing. Also, it's not comprehensive. And what I mean by that is it really is shaped by the participants who responded to the survey and gave us input. There is data behind it as well. I did a sort of a literature review of regional hazard mitigation plans from cities and counties, and also looking at least for natural hazards, data that we have from NOAA and from FEMA as far as natural hazards within our region. So there's a little bit of that, but then it is also shaped by those who are involved in the expertise and the experiences of the participants. And again, it does not provide the details regarding unique attributes for individual counties or facilities. So it's scaled up to the regional level. So, you know, some hazard may be more important for your county level than what you see up here, and just know that these are kind of the assumptions that we went into the planning process, and also to understand as we talk about it. So for our round 1 and round 2s and 3s, we had kind of different stakeholders. This is a regional healthcare hazard vulnerability assessment, so we really wanted to emphasize the healthcare feedback and input. So our first round survey was just limited primarily to healthcare and EMS. And then the second round survey, as well as the general webinar that we had, we invited public health and emergency management. And that was an attempt, again, to focus on healthcare perspectives, but also to then sort of verify the findings that the outputs of the first survey, verify those findings with public health and emergency management perspectives as well. So the tool that we used, if you guys have done these tools, there's the Kaiser Permanente version, which there's lots of different types of versions of that. So the one that we used is similar to that, but we made some modifications, of course, with our hazard list. We took out hazards that were just not relevant to our region, like hurricanes. And then we sort of modified some of the categories up there. You'll see usually the hazard vulnerability assessments look at human impact, business impact, and property impact. And we decided to really just focus on what Asper was saying with the demand to, or the impact to healthcare services, or the ability of healthcare to provide those services. So we consolidated that into a healthcare impact. And then this particular tool that we use looked at probability as occurrence as well as response. And that's referring to, sorry, I'm going to skip that one really quick. Nope. I thought I had something on here, but I think I hit it. So that refers to, again, the likelihood of it occurring, and then the likelihood that there would be a regional response. And so we asked people to rate each of these hazards based on a 1, 2, 3 scale for that, and then also the probability of impact to regional healthcare services. So that was the first round. And then the second round, we incorporated the phases of emergency management as an external focus, because again, at the regional level, wanting to emphasize that external focus. So this was just a snapshot of the tool that we use. So we ended up with 39 hazard events going into the first round, and you can, I won't show all of the hazards, but general categories. Again, with the naturally occurring events, we took data from NOAA and from FEMA and provided that as far as likelihood of it occurring, because we do have data based on that with historical trends. And then our tool gave us 3 different ways to rate the data. And this was kind of an interesting process to figure out which list to use. So it gave us an option to weight it based on occurrence. So that's the, back to here, that's this category. And then it gave us an option to weight it on the response, this category. or non-weighted, where it's just a straight equation. And they were all sort of tweaked. I won't show you the different lists, but the one that we ended up choosing was the response one, because at a regional level, we need to be prepared and with the healthcare coalition, not just for things that happened again and again and again, but things that would really activate the healthcare coalition and mobilize us at the regional level. So that's where we thought the risk response would be kind of is a good balance between things that happen frequently as well as things that are catastrophic and might need a lot of coordination. So I meant to put in a drum roll slide because this is kind of anticlimactic after all of that. So this was the list that we came up with. So you'll see the top 5 up there are what ranked the highest. And so I have the general high, medium, lows for each for the response, occurrence, and impact. And again, we're weighting it towards response here. Mass casualty came up as our #1 hazard, and I think that's pretty common with what we do a lot with our exercises and our drills and our planning. But then you see some other kind of things that aren't as common on a lot of lists with the pandemic influenza, which we might be experiencing now, as well as infectious disease outbreaks. And then you see more of the common high occurrence ones with wildfire and severe blizzard snowfall. A lot of the natural hazard ones tend to be more, had a higher probability of occurring, but didn't really need a regional response to deal with those. So that was sort of a main difference between the weighting towards occurrence versus weighting towards response. We saw on the occurrence one, we saw a lot more emphasis on high winds and wildfires versus this one. They're a little bit farther nested down, and some of those other ones that might require a lot of resources or coordination, collaboration across boundaries and across counties get emphasized a little bit more in this list. So something else that we did was we did a matrix to plot the impact to healthcare services at low, moderate, high over there against the regional response. And then the bubble corresponds to likelihood of incident to occur. So bigger the bubble, more often. Oh no. Who wants to guess? Okay, so I think that must be because I copied this over from a different PowerPoint and it didn't carry over the data. So this will be in the assessment if you are really into matrices. So sad. So this one over here is wildfire. And then these up here are the pandemic, influenza, and disease outbreaks. And then this one over here is drought. So not really a concern on the scale of things. Shoot, and that's kind of all I remember. Sorry about that. Oh, this one? Okay. Yeah, so high impact to healthcare services and high regional response. Here a little bit wildfire, a little bit lower impact healthcare services, but participants thought a high level of regional response on that. So yeah, this will be in the final assessment. And again, I apologize that sort of didn't work out there. But the assessment also includes some data about our region that I pulled from census. Part of the ask for deliverable is to look at populations at risk and provide demographic information about that. So I pulled all that information, and so within the assessment itself, there'll be a section that has some of that demographic broken out by county and then summarized for the entire region. I also, well, once we did that, we determined that it might have a wider use. So the full community profile is actually going to be a standalone document, but this is going to be sort of summarized and put into the assessment as part of the package, but we'll also make that full community profile available in addition to this, and just because we thought it might have more applicable uses than being nested within the HVA. But just some basic things. Our region is 25% of the total Washington state population, or area, sorry, 10% of the total population. And based on FEMA data, we've had 129 disaster declarations through the counties from 1953 to 2016. Did I say 129? Yeah, okay. And then this is just an example of a table that we have in there. I should say that this data is looking at-risk populations. So I'm using a lot of vulnerability indicators. So it's not just so it's not entirely a general overview of what your county has with census data. It is more narrowly focused on at-risk populations and vulnerable data. But hopefully it provides some good information for you guys to look over and consider when you're doing your own HVAs of not only what hazards are in our region, but also what our population demographics are as well. So as far as implementing this, we're just finishing up some stakeholder review of the document, and then we'll be having it available on our website or on Dropbox and pushing it out over email for you guys all. I also have I can put this back at the end of this, but I did do sort of an infographic of our hazards as well as some community profile information as just a takeaway for today, so you guys have something since I didn't have the actual assessment ready. But as far as moving forward, again, this provides a foundation for your organizational HVA as a way to compare regional hazards with what is coming out of your own assessment. So you don't have to look at that top 20 list and say, okay, now we're really gonna work on pandemic influenza every day. That just might not be relevant to what you're doing, but just know that that's something that as we look at our own trainings and drills and exercises over the next couple of years, we might be incorporating some of these hazards within that. Again, the community profile data hopefully will be a reference. And then of course, we're gonna review sort of this information annually to make sure that we're staying relevant with what hazards are out there, what threats are coming, and if needed, change any priority rankings so we can have something that is relevant for you all to use and consider. So that is all I have. Again, I'll put these in the back, and then hopefully within the next, I'd say within the next 2 weeks, we'll have the assessment out to you guys. So that's all.
Any questions? Great, Martin, thank you very much.